there's this thing called getting it right. It's about getting it right. Wanting it's just to look good. I mean, we want to present ourselves in the best possible light, right? Some of us. Number one, I can only speak for myself, and number two, there's the human condition. These qualities and traits that have to do with that are akin, that run rampant. They're characteristics and traits that humans have. It's part of being human. So, well, by and large, look, for the most part, people, there's this acceptance factor, right? People want to be accepted, they want to be liked, they want to be accepted, and they want to look good, right? Like, who wants to look bad? Like, unless it's intentionally on purpose or whatnot. So I'm a philosopher. I like to philosophize. I like to dig deep. And because I like to dig deep, this has gotten me in trouble at certain times. And when I mean trouble, I don't mean with the law. I mean trouble with myself. And what I mean by this is over analyzation. Now, we could be like, whoa, analyzing and philosophizing, two different things. True. They can also be the same. They're similar, because within philosophy, there's analyzing. So, in this video, there's absolutely nothing that I am trying to get right, per se. There is a message that I do want to get right. What I mean by what I just said is that there's this analysis paralysis, there's wanting to look good, there's it's got to be perfect. There's a whole lot that goes into presenting oneself, presenting myself. And the whole thing is, this goes into like the analyzation, the analysis, the paralysis of the analysis, analyzing like my background. It's like, oh my God, I don't have a backdrop. My lighting isn't the best, is that my hair sticking out right there? What are people going to think? People are going to think whatever they're going to think. So, yeah, my background could be distracting. Like, am I in the center of the frame? There are basics when it comes to filming, framing, lighting, and such, right? I'm like, what's in my background that will expose me? Like, people are going to find out something about me, something they can use against me, something personal, some little troll. Some trolls are going to be coming in here, and they're going to be picking online fights virtually through a chat, right? And that too is part of human nature, human condition. Now, when I say human condition, I mean more or less like in general. So even though trolling, purposefully instigating a dispute online. And I was looking at the definition the other day. This is not exactly the origin of where the term trolling came from online. And then it evolved into this kind of like, sinister or, mischievous person. And again, there's like all levels and sorts of people who engage in such matter. And, some of it can be for legitimate debate or to get a conversation going. And some of it's just downright dark, deceptive, or just absolute people up to no good, just playing a game. And that's it's part of the world we live in. Yet when I say this is part of the world we live in, it's like, it sounds, that right there to me sounds, while it may be true, it sounds like being at the effect of. It's like, oh, well, it's just the world we live in, can't do anything about it. Bullshit. There is some things that we have a say in, we have some power in, right? For sure. And then part of that power and control understanding and knowing that there are some things we have no control over. Right? It's the courage to change the things I can, and what is it? The intelligence, the smarts to know the things like the wisdom to know the things I can't, and or the wisdom to know the difference. So it's give me the power, universe, grant me the power to accept the things I cannot change the things I can, accept the things I cannot, and the wisdom to know the difference. Totally not verbatim from the particular reference book that came from. And essentially, it's like there are things I can control. I know this. What can I control? What can I change? And then there are things I cannot control, things I cannot change. And just the wisdom to know the difference, to have the peace of mind, right? So about a year ago or so, I was interviewing an individual, and oftentimes I'm on the other side of the camera, right? I'm on the side. I'm filming, I'm directing, asking the questions, setting up the shots, the angles, and such. And in this particular interview, he's setting out about on an endeavor. So put together a list of questions. And when it comes to interviewing, there's do the people know the questions ahead of time, or is it in the moment? And there are different reasons, different tactics or strategies to go about it, not to deceive anyone, just depending on the subject, the content, the matter, and everything. Again, though, to stay on track, this interview I was doing, it informal interview for a very formal purpose. This wasn't a paid gig, wasn't a paid job. This was an exchange and a getting to know this person, and we were doing some collaborative work. So after I interview him, he's like, "Hey, how about you sit down? You sit down. Let's get you interviewed." This has happened a few times in my career of filming, doing interviews. I love speaking with people. I love being behind the camera, because there's the speaking, there's the narration that people are talking, right? There's that part that tells the story, the body language that tells the story, the music that tells this the audio, the oral narration of it, and then lighting assists in telling the story. So many elements. The camera, the framing, the angles, and how the camera is moving or not moving, and all this tells the story as well. So anyhow, I'm used to being on the side of putting the story together. So you say the flip was script, the script was flipped, and I'm in the hot seat or hot spot. Questions I'm being asked, he was making them up on the spot, right? So kind of like going into the interview blind. Now, the interview was not live. The interview wasn't for an intended purpose. At that time, it's like, hey, let me ask you some questions. Cool. I'm hardly ever on this side of the camera when it's unless it's just me, like right now, right? This is a complete monologue. There's no script I'm reading from. There's no monitor. I did not plan this out, other than like, hey, I need to get in front of the camera. It's been a while since I've been in front of the camera, right? So after speaking with him, because he's like, okay, wait a minute. Okay, this shirt, how does this shirt look? He's looking at the shirt, checking himself out in the mirror. Let me see how I look. We do, a brief recording. I show him the recording. He's looking at it himself, like, okay, the hair here, wants to look good. Of course, want to look good. And then he's like, oh, I'm saying this, or I'm doing this movement, or whatnot. And it had been a while since I had done an interview, and dude, I was excited. I love doing interviews. I love being behind the camera, right? What do I love doing? Yeah. So I'm like, yeah, we want there to be comfort in it, I'm like, this should not be antagonizing, person should not be suffering in front of the camera. Yet knowing that this is a thing, people seeing themselves on camera, hearing themselves. I remember the first time I heard my voice recorded. This is like, whether high school, for certain, could have been junior high. I mean, in fact, like even before that, with home videos and video cassette recorders, camcorders. However, like being younger, it's like, okay, hey, that's me, woo. And then, developing and, going through puberty and beginning to mature, and then really becoming self-conscious of myself, like what I'm looking like, what I'm sounding like. Yeah, I remember listening to an audio recording, and I'm like, oh, really? This is what I sound like? Oh, I don't know if I like this. And so this particular individual, he's going through the process of, oh my God, so I'm on camera, so I look like, I sound like, and all of this stuff. And what was interesting about that, or an added element to it, was that the subject matter that I'm interviewing him on is it deals with psychoactive. It's a psychoactive subject. All right, and this gentleman leads ceremonies with this particular medium, and so throughout the process, the experience of the ceremony, interviewing him, because it's for healing, it's for releasing, it's for opening up, it's for letting go, it's for removing. I've recently developed a new relationship with the word release. I'm big on words. Anyhow, like blocks, just like blowing blocks, whatever these blocks that are holding people back and such, right? So there's this therapeutic element to it, right? And my background in massage and body work is, about opening up these channels. Yes, it's releasing the tension in the muscles, or removing the tension in the muscles. It's bringing about so many elements, whether like relaxation, whether it's, or like even stimulation, the preparing of an athlete for an event, right? So it could be for increasing of range of motion, right? It could be to reduce swelling. There's so many elements that go along with massage and body work, yet that main element, is this healing, this maintaining, this therapy, right? Preparation, maintaining for an increased enjoyment in life, so to speak, right? So there's this therapeutic element, massage and body work, this ceremony and process that he does. There's this therapeutic element to it. And so I'm interviewing him it's the first interview I had done in quite some time. Like, I'm just going to say, maybe a year and a half, right? And so experiencing his experience about how he's feeling on camera, how he's looking, what he's saying, and just having that experience of watching him, go through this process and analyzing himself and like his emotions, feelings, and all of that. I'm like, yeah. And then me having the experience of being in that spotlight, so to speak, when he was asking me questions and being able to be with like the person in that video. So watching him, like be with himself, watching him and his reaction to watching himself and listening to himself on camera. I'm like, And then again, me being in front of that camera in like a really long time since I had been in the situation of someone asking me questions. And then me, newly, freshly looking at myself on camera, like, whoa, I wasn't prepared for some of those questions he asked. Like, whoa, hold on. Let me think about this. Wait, why did I answer that? No, that's not what I wanted to answer. So I'm, again, become freshly acquainted to this process of being on camera, right? What I'm saying, what I look like, my body movements. I'm like, oh. And then there was, like this thought of, well, this is interesting. This is definitely taking a look at myself or at the individual in a very personal manner, right? And I'm like, what are the benefits? Like cathartic, like having this like release. Like, what are the benefits of putting someone in front of a camera for therapeutic purposes? Going through questions, asking them questions that they may be uncomfortable answering because it has them look inside, it has them digging deep, it has them looking in the past, it has them looking at themselves. So not only being asked these questions, yet then watching themselves being asked these questions and what their response is. So I'm thinking, hey, whether like this footage, like they keep this footage or they erase this footage, it's deleted, destroyed. I'm like, there's something here around processing, just processing. There's this therapeutic purpose. There's therapeutic value, with being recorded. So that really got me thinking. And, today, granted, this is definitely, it's around, well, most certainly a year. It's probably around a year. I have to check the exact dates, right? I get caught up in how I'm appearing on camera. I haven't posted on this channel in quite some time. And for me, like reconnecting, like what is the purpose of this channel? This channel right here, because I have more than one YouTube channel. And I have quite a few of them actually. Although, they're not all active. Some of them are from the past. Some of them are new that are like on deck and waiting. And it's like, okay, I really do need to have some clarity on where I'm going with these channels. And so now to bring this conversation right now here into the moment about this channel directly, I have thoughts all the time. I am what you would call, or I consider myself a creative person. Now, creativity comes in all forms, shapes, and manners. Yet I have a lot of thoughts. Thoughts come to me quite a bit, quite often. And I mean, people could be like, I've got thoughts all the time, right? But not only do I have thoughts, there are like all these ideas. And so through what I was reading the other day, don't you love algorithms? Sometimes they're sweet and sometimes they're just absolutely annoying. Anyhow, I came across this to research. One thing leads to another, right? That's how the foxhole, you keep on, that rabbit hole, you keep on going down. And it's talking about dopamine and that how water releases dopamine. I'm like, what? And it turns out, now the more research for me to do, cross-reference and all this stuff, yet the dopamine released in the body when you're drinking water is greater when you're dehydrated, right? You're dehydrated, so you drink that water, you're reestablishing, the balance, that is bringing that water up in your body. And because there's such an imbalance between the dehydration and then the hydration, there's a larger amount of dopamine that is released. And I'm like, that's fascinating. So along with this channel, The Neurodivine, this is neurodiversity, and my research, curiosity into neurodiversity really, like the tipping point was in 2023. And I began doing some research based upon myself coming back from the Dominican Republic in 2023. And, just certain experiences and circumstances that happened over there with myself and others, taking a look at, I'm like curious. It just started doing research, started typing away, and the cluster of personality disorders came up, right? And so psychology, so they say, so I've heard, so it is a soft science. There's no blood test, urine test, hair follicle test to say, oh yeah, you've got this. You're autistic. You're OCD. You are what we call attention deficit. You're you're attentionally deficicated. Sounds like defecated, as in fecal defecation. Attention deficit disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Then there's adult onset, all this, and again, like this is all based upon like characteristics, mannerisms, and such. So essentially, neurodiversity versus like neurotypical, right? Neurodiversity in the general definition is like acting, doing, just things that are out of the ordinary, things that are done, said. There's a way about that people go about doing things that the majority of the population does not. So within these personality disorders, which right there, it puts it into some kind of negative aspect. It's a disorder. Is it now? Okay. If you want to classify it as such, a topic for another time, though. So anyway, there are these personality types, things people do, they say, these mannerisms, and they overlap each other, right? Because you can have one person with these characteristics and one person with these characteristics. They have some of the same characteristics, yet they're going to be diagnosed differently. So if you imagine, the Olympic rings, how they kind of just overlap each other. There you have it with the cluster of personality disorders. You have all these different personalities, they overlap each other, and bada boom, bada bing. There you have it, right? So I'm like, this is interesting. This is really interesting. And for some time, for quite a few years, I've been wondering about, well, am I somewhere on the spectrum of autism? Well, ADHD, ADD, RD, D2, C3PO, I must be somewhere on here, right? When I was in high school, seeing psychiatrists, psychologists, bipolar disorder. I'm like, perfect. Brian Patrick, my first and middle name, BP, bipolar. It's fitting, right? So the medication they put me on, and then, they're like manic-depressive and all that stuff. So I was on various medications throughout high school. I didn't particularly care for them because I did notice just my thinking, thought process, the creativity, just expression, it definitely altered that. Now, this has been quite some time since I've been on any of those drugs. I remember just it not being a good time. That, of course, I mean, taking into consideration just my age, puberty, that particular, we could say, station, that cycle or circumstance, or that time, that era. I mean, there's a lot going on in the, we could say, like with those transitional years, coming out of, basically a kid, and then the body changing, ba 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 ba. So there are two videos. In conclusion, wrapping this up, there are two. There are two channels. Well, one is an interview I watched last night. This lady, is interesting. Really? Yeah, really. So it's sociopathy, sociopath, and that she is, and she talks about there's is it the DLSM? It's essentially what psychiatric disorders, conditions. I mean, just when it comes to heady stuff, what's going on in the brain, and then the PLR, and pretty certain that the PLR is the one, and the DLSM, that if I'm getting that right or not. More research, much more research to do. Aye. Lots more conversation as well. So I'm gonna put that video that I watched, I'm gonna bring that into this channel here and make that available. And it's very interesting. So she's diagnosed with sociopathy, being a sociopath, and she chose the career of going into psychology. It's really interesting. Really interesting. Really interesting. And it was the first time, just the way she presented it, the conversation. It's someone saying that, yeah, they've been diagnosed with this. And again, we got to take a look at, how are people diagnosed with this, which is interesting because she says in order to do the PLR, to diagnose someone for sociopathy, you have to have committed a crime. And so she's like, this cuts out a whole big part of the population that can have this, that hasn't committed a crime. Which brings me to the interview I heard of a professor out in Santa Barbara, and this goes back to 2023. And he doing a study, he's working with criminals and sociopathy. They do the brain scans, CAT scans, I believe, right? And so he had access, to this equipment and such, brought his family in, and however many, 20, 30, right? Because then it's like, hey, let's take a look at like Alzheimer's. Apparently there's a part of the brain that, it'll light up if there's a like a what is it? If you're if there's a chance you can have it. So he brought his family in, and the labs come back, or the labs, they sent it off to those guys who study them and such. I mean, they sent it off, and look, I don't know the details. He had his family come in. They all got a CAT scan. They got the brain scanned, and they get the results, and they're like, yeah, there's someone in your family comes back positive for that part of the brain that lights up for sociopathy, sociopaths, psychopaths. Yeah, what are your families? And he's like, yo, whatever, you guys are joking, right? They're like, no, serious, take a look. Turns out it's him. So he goes into this, and it is an interview, right? And he's talking about nurture, nature, and his mother and everything. So it's interesting. So this guy, his brain is lighting up in these areas, yet he's not out killing people. He's not on crime sprees, right? And then, so that was like the first time I had heard of it, of like a non-criminal, like, oh, they're a psychopath, they're a sociopath. Like, you think of deranged, killer, lunatic, bad people. So that was the first time that I had heard that, with the person not being a criminal or actively criminating. He's very criminating. He's criminating right now. It's kind of like, drinking. Are you on the wagon? You off the wagon? Okay, joke. So yesterday, this interview I watched with this lady is a monologue because, someone is asking her questions unless she did a brilliant job of putting this together on her own, which I highly doubt, yet possible. And it's her, and she's just speaking and speaking and speaking. And she's talking about what she has done to get the release, to feel okay. Like the illegal things she's done. Like she talks about what she did. And, she didn't kill anybody. She didn't harm anybody. It's very actually creative in a sense. Very, very, very interesting to listen to. I'm going to put that link here. And then the other person who I find interesting so far to date, as of this publication, broadcast, this recording, is this gal who grew up in a dysfunctional family, and then what came out of it, like with her, like how she adapted and who she became. This would be the nurture part of it, right? Because we're looking at nature and nurture, and she has a ton of good stuff, and one of the things I relate to and what she talks about is like collecting things, borderline hoarding, or people who do hoard. Now there's again, there's a spectrum, because I've been in houses where it's a literal like maze or labyrinth, where you're just I'm walking amongst stacks of newspapers and cardboard boxes. And then there's kind of like the level where I classify my grandfather and I is at. It's like, this stuff is good. Well, why would we just leave it here? Well, let's take it. We could use it. We could give it away. And then, using it to repair something, using it to create something. It's good stuff. It's good material. There's no reason to get rid of it. And this can go on, and this I can get into feng shui and where things are placed and how often they're moved and stuff. So I will not do that in this video. I'm wrapping this video up right here, right now, and take a look at the links. Take a look at the links to the videos that I spoke about, and perhaps you'll find something interesting for yourself, or something that can shed some light on some questions you've had, or just spark of general curiosity and such, because it begins with a conversation, right? Make a great day. Make a great day.